Attorney Joseph Tully. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So President Trump invoked this rarely used law known as Title 10. What is it, and how is it different than when the governor asked for the National Guard to be brought in?
Sure. So Title 10, think of that as the rule book for the United States Armed Forces. So Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. And when the National Guard gets federalized, as President Trump has done, it also governs that. So normally speaking, the National Guard is under the control of the governor of the state. And it's only in very rare situations, as you pointed out, when the president overrides the governor, so to speak, and federalizes the National Guard.
Okay, so, we dug into a little bit of history here. It looks like the last time a president sent guardsmen without the consent of the governor was in 1965 under President Lyndon Johnson. Can you compare that situation to the situation we're seeing play out now?
Sure. So what's important to know is that there's sort of three different factors going on. There's Title 10, which is, again, the rule book for the armed forces and applies to the National Guard. There's a Posse Comitatus Act, which says that federal troops can't assist in law enforcement. So National Guard can't arrest people unless the president invokes the Insurrection Act. So there's two different ways the president can invoke Title 10. One is the Insurrection Act. One is the Federal Service Act. The Insurrection Act is not limited by Posse Comitatus. The Federal Service Act is. So right now, while President Trump did invoke Title 10, he only used it under the Federal Service Act. So the National Guard is still restricted. They can't do arrests. They can't do raids. They could sit around, they could protect buildings, they could follow ICE around and protect those people. So in 1965, what happened was the president used the Insurrection Act, meaning they can make arrests. They were fully active law enforcement, whereas here it's still, at this point, more limited. So while President Trump did skip the governor, he did it in a limited way.
Okay, and Governor Newsom has made very clear that this is not what he wanted to happen. He didn't want to see the National Guard come in. He thinks that this led to even more chaos. In fact, he's calling the move unconstitutional and has said that he will file a lawsuit. Do you think there's any merit to him filing a lawsuit?
I do, yes. So normally speaking, a president doesn't go from 0 to 60. There's more cooperation, more back and forth between the governor and the president. Most of the time, as in Hurricane Katrina, as in the Rodney King riots, when the National Guard was used, the governor asks the president for help. And here, what Governor Newsom is saying is, look, we didn't need to go from 0 to 60. We could have done this in a different way. What you are doing is actually instigating these riots. It's putting the fuel on the fire, so to speak.
Okay, and on Saturday, Border Czar Tom Homan made comments he would not rule out arresting Newsom or Mayor Karen Bass if they interfere with federal immigration efforts. It looks like he clarified those comments on Fox News this morning, saying that no one is above the law. What do you make of this, though?
Well, I at this point, I think it's more rhetoric. I think they'd have to invoke the Insurrection Act to have the National Guard be active law enforcement. Again, otherwise, right now, they're not able to do arrests. So there's a few steps that would happen. It sounds like saber rattling to me. It doesn't sound like it's well grounded in the law.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, Joseph.
Thank you for having me.
Let's get a check now of our next weather forecast.